With 45 days till the election, we give you a snapshot of where the race is now, who's ahead, and also why. And next, we'll play the what if game. What if Gore had won the presidency? Would 9/11 have happened? What would have happened after? Would we have gone to war in Iraq? Would we be facing an extremely different America right now? One author's got that very hypothetical. We'll get into it as we play a little game of what if. Plus, we will have our latest installment of Uh-Oh Pedro, everybody's favorite swindling state lawmaker. Believe it or not, just when he thought he was gone, he is back at it again. In case you were wondering, his final act of scheming, it doesn't involve any sushi, but it sure does involve a lot of hand in a piggy bank that is not his. We will explain. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us this Friday evening, September 21st. And before we get into politics and the latest from around our region, we got some breaking news this evening. Tens of thousands of Libyans, they marched to the gates of one of the country's strongest Islamic extremist groups today, one of the country's many militias, and they demanded that it disband. This certainly a twist of the latest news we've heard in the Middle East, but the protest today, it comes as a reaction to the attack that killed the U.S. ambassador and 4 other Americans last week. Today's public backlash is against militias that run rampant in that country and defy the country's new post-Gaddafi leadership. No to militias. That was the chant you could hear over and over by the growing crowd. Now, some even held signs mourning the killing of the U.S. ambassador, Chris Stevens. We will continue to keep an eye on the story that, frankly, not a lot of us saw coming. Now, as I said here, we are just 45 days from the election here, and we tonight take a snapshot at the state of the race. Today, President Obama just over 3 points when you kind of crunch all the numbers again and come up with a composite. Those are the national numbers. But that's not the difference from how the race was shaping up 4 years ago to the day. Obama, he was beating McCain by just over 2 points then, and we know how that turned out. In terms of fundraising, Obama had a major disadvantage just a few months ago. He's amassed a total of $441 million. Romney, little over $284 million, and the president, he raised about $20 million more than Romney last month alone, and that reverses a trend of 4 months where he was being outraised by his Republican competitor. Now, the Obama-aligned super PAC also beat out Romney's super PAC last month, and trust me, nobody saw that one coming. Restore Our Future, the Romney super PAC here, they raised only $7 million last month, way down from more than $20 million that it was raising per month during the summer. And while both candidates in 08 jumped from campaign event to campaign event, I mean, you had to keep a scorecard to keep track of them, following a closed political conventions, Romney, he's taking a much different tact here. Well, the best way you could do it, if you want to be polite, is a slow and steady pace. In the 12 days from September 7th to September 18th, Romney held, get this, 7 total public campaign events and delivered a policy speech to the National Guard Association. He also heard a bunch of private fundraisers, not the one like we saw in May that got him in trouble, but many of them were in politically insignificant localities like New York, Chicago, Salt Lake City, not battleground states. By contrast, during the comparable time in 08, McCain and Obama, they held more than 20 public events each. Now, many will say, hey, Rich, that's different time, different candidate. But if this is a sign of somebody unwilling to put in the maximum effort here, and even those closest to him say the same, or a campaign staff for that matter, what does it say about the candidate and the ambition of this certain party and certainly standard bearer as we speak? I want to bring in our panel on this. Got Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and resident wise guy. Basil Smikle here, political strategist, former top aide to Hillary, and a professor at Columbia University. Look at you. And a senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, who usually would take off most of the reading here, and I'm already out of breath. Andrew. All right. That said, figures lie, liars figure, I get that. But Basil, this guy's had a brutal summer. Was not the convention that these guys scripted. He's had a really tough last few weeks since Tampa. The least he could do is show he really wants it and start banging out speeches, banging out public appearances. They put a leash here on, on Ryan. Yeah, we haven't heard the guy since Tampa. And, if he's going to do damage control, he's certainly doing it out of the public eye when you talk about Mitt Romney. What are these guys doing?
Well, you know, I found it to be interesting because the knock on Romney during the primary was that he was too scripted. And I think what's interesting now, post-primary win and certainly a convention time and since then, they don't seem to be scripted enough. They're just not tight enough on their messaging. And I think, actually, I don't mind him, if I'm just being the straight political consultant, I don't mind him coming out of the spotlight a little. Get your game right. You know, get your message on point. Because what you have coming up now are going to be some really important debates. Sometimes debates will not change direction that significantly, but for Mitt Romney, these are extraordinarily important debates, and I would rather him step away from the public spotlight for a little while, get your stuff right,
but Basil,
and then go back out there.
We've covered, the three of us, campaigns of all different kinds, all different candidates in different places. You were on the inside. And I guess my question is, we don't even have to go through the litany, but there's been, you know, mistake after mistake out of the candidate's mouth. You've had great candidates to make life easy for you, and you've seen tougher candidates that's where the strategist and the campaign manager really earns his salary. Should more blame on this be put on his handlers by putting him in environments or not preparing him? Or does this at the end boil down to the candidate who's been doing a self-immolation routine here, hurting himself when he speaks? Is it the messenger or the message?
It's a little of both. I do think that the campaign staff should be handling him a lot with stronger hands, quite frankly. They're just not scripting him appropriately. At least that's what it seems like. Now, yes, you're absolutely right. All of this, all of the negative press, all of the mistakes, all of the gaffes are actually coming out of his mouth. So he certainly has to take responsibility for that. And that's why I go back to the point I was making earlier, to me, it's okay if you take him out of the spotlight. You reduce the opportunities for him to make more mistakes and for reporters to continue to question the mistakes he's made before.
The only thing I'd say to that, though, is into the vacuum come the volume of sound bites that he's given. If Romney's staff is trying to keep him away from the cameras, as Basil suggested, it might be, as Basil suggested here, for good reason here. Here is a look back at some of Romney's more memorable gaffes just of the campaign season.
I'm not concerned about the very poor. We have a safety net.
I like being able to fire people who provide services to me. 10,000 bucks? $10,000 bet?
I also tell my story. I'm also unemployed.
Middle income is $250,000 and less.
I pay a lot of taxes. I've been very successful. What's the effective rate I've been paying? Well, it's probably closer to the 15% rate than anything.
I know what it's like to worry whether you're going to get fired. There were a couple of times I wondered whether I was going to get a pink slip.
Corporations are people, my friend.
Don't try and stop the foreclosure process. Let it run its course and hit the bottom.
This attack of success is very different than what we've seen in our country's history. Take a risk, get the education, borrow money if you have to from your parents.
The administration was wrong to stand by a statement sympathizing with those who had breached our embassy in Egypt, instead of condemning their actions.
There are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they are victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it. But it's an entitlement, and the government should give it to them.
And that, of course, the famous 47% address caught on camera, albeit surreptitiously recorded. All right, trust me, if we wanted to keep playing the greatest hits, we'd be here for another 20 minutes. You get the drift, though. And we've got an update today when it comes to those questions surrounding Mitt Romney and the elusive tax returns. He released his 2011 tax returns this afternoon, revealing that he paid an effective rate of about 14% last year. All right, Andrew. Basil mentioned about the debates, and the calendar in October says we're going to see 3 presidential and 1 VP. Give a sign of optimism for the Romney team in that Ronald Reagan was trailing, and by trailing a much bigger margin than Mitt Romney is right now before those debates, and he closed a double-digit gap here. There is precedent that he can close this margin at this point in the calendar.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Bill Clinton got a big bounce through the debates and after the convention. Ronald Reagan got a big bounce after the debates also. I think, at least my take on this is that the Romney campaign has been putting him out there less because I think they're less worried about scoring points in the weeks following the convention, especially while the Democratic convention was going on. There was no need to do that. And they're trying to hoard their money as best they can for the last 2 months of the campaign so that they can flood the airwaves with advertisements.
In the last 2 months of the
no,
campaign.
we're not quite there yet. I mean, when the calendar turns to October, well, I guess, all right, last month of the campaign, my math is off. But, you know, once the calendar turns to October, I think they're going to step up their advertisements. I think they also look at the votes that are out there and say, we got to get our base out, so we're going to make sure that we have plenty of money left over to get out the vote.
That begs the question. It's funny, I was around a lot of folks who certainly aren't going to vote for the president this afternoon. I didn't find one person, even if they came from the same financial sector as Mitt Romney, who, forget about loves the guy, likes the guy. When people say he's not relatable to the middle class, I haven't found somebody that he is connected with. And I'm not being a wise guy, other than the wife and kids, right? I was going to make a dog too joke there, but you know where that goes. My point is, how does he have to make himself relatable to anybody? I mean, we've always said, hey, he just has to say he's not the president. That's not going to do it. That much we agree on.
It may.
You know what? Every swing state says you're wrong.
Okay, remember, this thing is within the margin of error. So in the I'm not looking at the states right now. I'm looking at the general poll. All it takes is one October surprise, something in another country, and this race. I mean, let's face it. Obama is not known to make many mistakes. The machine in Chicago, they keep a pretty tight grip. And so don't expect the campaign folks and the president, don't expect for him to make a mistake. But anything is possible. The debates, as we've heard, who knows what's going to happen? We don't know how strong the resentment is out there to the current financial climate. So who knows?
And I would also add, the Republicans are not stupid.
Right, they're not at all.
They are running stealthy state-by-state campaigns. It's a presidential campaign. It's a national campaign.
There's a strategy here. It's news to a lot of people on the ground.
I will tell you.
I mean, you go to the folks in Wisconsin. You saw what Tommy Thompson said?
Understand.
He's a Republican guy running. This is in Ryan's home state, and he says, they're killing me, basically, at the top of the ticket. You go to Florida right now. You got people that are trying to distance themselves from Romney. If this is some kind of covert, coherent strategy, they haven't let the party in on it.
I am not an apologist for the Republican Party, but I will say it's a state-by-state campaign, and I still think we have time to see the real effect of that campaign take hold. I would say second week in October.
Well, we did the big number, and you said you're right. He's within the margin of error. 3 points around separating Obama and Romney on the national level. But state by state, we will break it down, and I believe it's much more of a steep hill for Mr. Romney to climb at this point. We're going to show you why after the break, and we want you, as always, to keep the dialogue going online, and we're going to hear from you tonight. Go to our Facebook page or Twitter, sound off. Here's our question here in election 2012. What do you think happens in 45 days? When we come back here, we'll get into that. I'm going to make these three go on the record with predictions 45 days from now. We're going to see who's right and wrong. I'm reminded of it forever. And we're going to have more updates from the campaign trail as well, including some choice words from Mrs. Romney. There's one Romney who's had it. We'll tell you what she had to say. And also, we're going to be getting your reaction. Stay with us.